Okay, Mikki, this is a special episode that we are doing today. We'll call it Story Time with Michelle and Mikki, where we're just going to ask each other questions and share some stories. And if there's anyone out there who doesn't know us, they're going to know us a lot better after this episode. And even people who maybe think they know us will learn something new about who we are, what makes us tick, what are our experiences, fun, epic stories today. So let's just get started. I'm just going to jump right in and ask you the very first question. What was tell the story about how you were inspired to do your first triathlon.
Let's see. So I was a trail runner. I did well, okay. Post PhD, I was very out of shape and really focused on work and science. But I had moved to Colorado. It was like 2008. And, I had been an athlete my whole life. And then I kind of stepped away to focus on PhD. And I wanted to get back into shape. I had adopted a dog and was doing some trail running sort of, for fun just to get back in the groove, after post PhD and dissertation. And I decided, I think I want to do like a long trail race, and a 50 miler sounded like fun. I was like, yeah, I think 50 miles would, why not? Right. I also
What
had
was your
tennis.
longest run when you decided that 50 miles would be fun?
I don't know, like 5 miles at the time. I had done marathons. I had, I
Okay.
had, I did Chicago Marathon in college, like year 2000 and maybe one. I don't even remember. So I was a runner, right? I ran even during my PhD. I was kind of running, but infrequently and mostly just. I really was fairly out of shape during my PhD, as most PhD students sometimes get. So, but I was like, yeah, I think I want to do something long again. In the back of my mind, I was like, maybe I could qualify for Boston if I got serious again. And so I hired a coach, and that coach happened to be a triathlete. So the first year I was just running, and I think she had me do some biking occasionally, right? Because I bike commuted. I'm like, oh, I can bike, sure, that's fine, and kind of added it into the program. And I did that the first year we worked together, and then through her experience in triathlon, I was like, yeah, I think an Ironman sounds like fun. And so I signed up for an Ironman, literally I grew up swimming in a river, not competitively, right? I just swam in a river and bike commuting. And I decided that I think I would want to do that. I love doing things all day long, right? Like the 50 miler was great. I can't remember that was like 13 hours or so. And I'm like, yeah, that was fun. I want to do, as soon as I crossed the line, I'm like, I want to do that again. Right. But I'd kind of seen the beauty of riding your bike for a long time. And, the pool kind of scared me. Swimming, not scared. I just was very uncertain that I could actually beat the cutoffs. Like it wasn't, the open water wasn't scary. Like I'd gone out swimming when I lived in Hawaii, swam way out, maybe farther than I should have, and I have no anxiety about open water or swimming really. But I'd never swum in a fashion that was like in a pool with like times and all that. So, anyways, the short of it is, I signed up for an Ironman, and as a warm up, she's like, "You should probably do a 70.3." And so I did a St. George
Probably at the time that was
70.3.
likely called a half Ironman, right?
A half
Was it
Ironman.
called?
Yes, it was called a
Like
half Ironman.
70.3 was new.
Right, right. So I did a half Ironman as a trial and loved it. And then I think a couple months later, I did my first full Ironman, and it was fantastic. And I was like, yeah, I want
Which
to do
one
that
was
again.
your first one?
Coeur d'Alene.
Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah. So that was my first one. So we had a comment on one of our videos on Instagram. Someone said they signed up for a sprint without ever having
Hmm.
really dabbled, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. I signed up for an Ironman having never really dabbled. Now I did hire a coach, right? Like I was like, I'm out of my range. Like I can run for a really long time, but I want to know what I should eat and like how to train. And so my
What
first
year was
Ironman
that?
was uh 20, I think 2012 or 2013. I try to remember now. I think it was 2013. So I'd had 2011, 2012, I was doing marathons and trail races, and mostly running, but doing a little bit of cycling, and bike commuting. And then I think I signed up for Coeur d'Alene. I probably gave myself about 9 months of a build
Hmm.
to get ready. And yeah, and then the rest was history. So yeah. But I did, yeah, I had run that distance, and I had run for a long time, 13 and a half. Actually, my 50 miler that I did was longer than most of my Ironman races in terms of just time on my feet. Yeah, doing things all day is fun for me. But yeah, so tell me, how did you've been in the sport a lot longer? Because I think you said
Yeah,
first Ironman was in the 90s, right? But how did,
97.
did you get into triathlon? You probably did it the smarter way, which is, do you like triathlon? Did you do some short stuff and then sign
Yeah.
up for an Ironman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up swimming and I was a swimmer in high school. I was probably good enough to swim on a college team, but I wasn't good enough that any college would have paid me, right? Like they weren't going to give me a scholarship to swim, but I happened to be a good springboard diver. And that was because I gymnastics for 10 years in my childhood. So diving was something I was physically really good at, but swimming was like where my heart was. So I did both in high school, but then I got a scholarship to UH for diving, but not swimming. And so I didn't swim at all for, I don't know, 3 years probably. And I transferred to Arizona State and I graduated from Arizona State. And while I was there, I jumped in with, there was a master's swim team that swam not at the competitive pool at Arizona State, but there was like a rec center pool at ASU. And so I was swimming with the master's group there, and there was a really cute boy. I was like, I mean, I was 20. I think I was 20, 21, and he was like 22, 23. And he was a professional triathlete. And I was like, I didn't even know I didn't know what a triathlon was. But I'm like, but that guy is hot. And he was swimming in my lane. And so yeah, at some point, like I just remember he like asked me out on a date, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm like so excited to go out with this cute boy. And then at some point, he was just basically like, "You're athletic, let's get you a bike." And like, so mine, like I've not ever really. I mean, I rode a bike when I was a kid, like all kids do, but never really ridden a bike. Never real. Well, I ran like in eighth grade track, but like I never really ran either. So you're athletic, let's get you a bike. He was racing at the time. So this would have been 1995. And he was racing as a professional. It was very B-level professional what he was doing. Like at that time, like in the 90s, to race as a professional, if you went under 10 hours at an Ironman, like as a male, like I don't know what the official criteria was, but like you could qualify as a pro. And so he had qualified as a pro. And I don't think he was racing Hawaii as a pro. I actually don't remember. Gosh, this is bad. But anyway, he was racing it. So, and he said, "You're athletic. Let's get you a bike." He took me to a bike shop. I bought a bike that didn't fit me. I got sold a bike that was like one right off the floor or whatever. It was a Quinchana-Roo. It was too big for me. I remember he took me out riding it like in a neighborhood, and I was just deathly afraid of like getting down. He's like, "Get in your aero bars," and I'm like, "No," that's
Yeah.
too scary. But so my intro then into the sport was accelerated because he was training for Kona.
Mm.
And now I'm really trying to remember, was he racing Kona as a pro or just an age grouper? I don't remember. He was out doing 20-mile runs, right? Like on a Sunday. And he had been like a college runner in that cross country and whatever. And so I had and there were no coaches back then, right? Like there are no triathlon coaches in the 90s. So nobody knew anything about what we were doing. It was just like experiment, fail, figure it out, talk to your training partners, right? Like kind of learn from each other, try, fail, try again. But so because he's out running 20 miles, like to me, I'm like 10 miles is nothing, right? Like I should be able to go run 10 miles. And because I had a background in swimming cardiovascularly, I was
Mm.
fine to run 10 miles. But after like 2 months of that, of just ramping my run volume like way too fast, my knees were killing me, my hips were killing, I had T-band problems and knee problems and pick the thing because my tendons weren't ready to do what my
Hmm.
cardiovascular system was ready to do. So I think I'm aware of that now when I get a new athlete who's like coming from a
Hmm.
swimming background but never really run. I
Hmm.
got you. Like we're going to build this differently so you don't end up injured in 3 months because like what you can do in the
Yeah.
beginning is like we need to have this sustainable ramp. Yeah, my first triathlon was a sprint triathlon in Texas where the water was really cold. We were visiting his family. He was from Texas. And so we went out there and we were just looked, and this was back in the days. Remember when you had magazines, like in the back of the magazine, it would have, because the internet was like hardly even a thing.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
weren't searching for races on the internet. You would go to your bike shop and get like the local magazine that in the back had a list of all the local events and their dates. And I think we had to, mail in our entry fees with like a stamp and a check. And anyway, so we found a sprint triathlon that wasn't too far from his parents' house. I had to buy myself a wetsuit like 2 days before because we found out the water was like 57 degrees or like something crazy. But then also, I remember this too from that race. They had a contest that was like the first swimmer out of the water without a wetsuit. So if you do the race without a
Mm-hmm.
wetsuit and you're the first swimmer out, then you win a free wetsuit. And so I remember like my boyfriend telling me, he's like, you could win that, right? Why don't you just swim it without a wetsuit and then you can win the wetsuit and then you don't have to buy one. So I remember he said the water was 57. I was like, absolutely not. Like, here's my money. I'm not swimming in 57 degrees without a wetsuit. So, yeah. And I remembered it. I don't remember like where I placed or how I did. I think I was one of the first people out of the water and probably just got my ass kicked the rest of the time. But yeah, I loved it. And it was only a couple of years later that my first Ironman was in 1997. So like 2 years
Seven.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Ironman Canada. And we,
Gotcha.
again, we
Yeah.
had no idea what we were doing training, right? Like, and because I ramped up my volume so high, so fast, I was totally injured at the time when I was supposed to be training a lot. And so, yeah, I was just completely underprepared for my first Ironman. But I came out of the water like top 10 overall, including the pros and everything, right? 55 minutes flat. And I'm literally like with the female pros because this is like they used to start everybody together,
Mm-hmm.
male, female, pro
Mm-hmm.
age group, or everybody just the gun at 7 a.m. Everybody goes, and I was like I'm flying right out of the water in 55 minutes. The first 2 hours of the bike at Penticton, if when it was that long big. Did you ever do Penticton?
No,
That
didn't.
was
Yeah.
it was a
Go ahead.
great course, like probably the best one, like maybe my favorite. But the first 40 miles, it's a giant loop, like a 112-mile loop. And the first 40 miles are slightly downhill and pretty flat, right? So just as fast as they can possibly be. And I had no idea of pacing, right? Like I wasn't wearing a heart rate monitor, not fuel, like we knew nothing. And I got to the mile 40 mark. And I remember looking at my watch and being like, oh, I've been riding for 2 hours. Like I'm averaging 20 miles an hour. I'm like, this is great. Awesome. And at that point, you like sort of take a right hand turn and you start climbing. And I knew at that point that it was what was it, like a 6 mile climb? So I was like, okay, so then you have a 6 mile climb. So I start climbing and I just have like one of those basic bike computers that shows your speed on it, right? So I got like 10 miles an hour. And so I was like, okay. So I was like, well, this is going to kill my average speed because I'm going to be climbing for the next hour. Like, this is going to take me. And yeah, that race was like, it was such an accomplishment to finish because I had no business finishing that race. Like I did not have like, I didn't have the fitness, I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the nutrition, I didn't have the pay. I had nothing except for like a strong will and a reasonably athletic body. Right. But like at that race, I remember stopping at mile 80 something. I don't know. Like, well, I stopped for special needs at wherever it was by Yellow Lake or something. And I stopped and I had picnic lunch. I packed myself a picnic lunch with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, Nutter Butters, and a Sunny Delight.
That's awesome. I love it.
So I stopped my bike. I sat down in the grass. I was really tired by that point. You know, like I'd been riding my bike for probably 5 hours and much slower than I had started. And I was like, wow, this is hard. And my knees are hurting. Like everything's hurting. I stopped again, like I don't know, an hour later before the last climb. And I just stopped at the aid station and was like, my knees are killing me. Like, I don't think I can get up this last, like it's another 3 mile climb or whatever. And like, I don't think I can do it. So I was fully prepared to drop out. And, I told the people at the aid station, like call like the SAG vehicle or whatever that was at the time. And they're like, okay, we called it for you. But it's just going to be a while before it gets here. And I said, I'm waiting and waiting, waiting. Like 20 minutes later, I'm like, I think it's probably just quicker if I just ride my bike back to the, because it's just like, if I get over this one 3 mile climb, then it's all downhill for the last, 15, 20 miles to the finish. So I thought I can probably just like pedal up it with mostly one leg and then just I'll coast into T2. So I get to T2 and those ladies in this tent and they're so friendly in Canada, so nice. But I was like, so I must have been 20, I was 23. And they're like, "Oh, honey, you're doing great. You're doing great. This is a great job." And I was like, and I'm just delirious in this change tent going like, I don't feel like running a marathon right now. And so know that, hey, I'd never run a marathon. I probably never run more than 10 miles like ever in my life and wasn't properly trained. "Oh, honey, you'll be fine. You'll be fine." And like, they literally dressed me like I was just sitting there and they dressed me, they like stood me up and shoved me out of this change tent and like, "Honey, you'll be fine." Like, oh my God. And I was just in this delirious daze. And I'm like walking out to like the run start line there. And I hear, this is my memory. And it's not likely actually how it happened, but you know how like your memory is what it is. So like
Hmm.
my memory of how that went down is I was just, I had like a bagel in one hand and a bunch of potato chips in the other. Like, and I'm just walking toward the start line. And there must not have been that many people in the race because the race announcers, like on the loudspeakers, it's like whole park area where there's all these spectators and fans and they're cheering and stuff. And he said, he's like, "All right, here comes number, like whatever, like let's get her running, right? Like let's make her run, like run." And he was encouraged. I heard him over the loudspeakers saying, "You should be running." And so I was like, I can't carry this bagel. So I threw the bagel out. I still got a handful of potato chips and I start running. And in my mind, the crowd goes wild, right? Like they're like, "Ha." My thought was like, oh, like they really want me to run. Like I should be, they want me to run. So in my delirious state, I just take off jogging down the road and I ran like 13 miles. I mean, jogged, but like, yeah, I mean, I want to say I did it in maybe 2:10 or I don't know. It was something that was like a reasonable pace for like the lack of fitness that I had. But I got to the far end because it was an out and back, 13 out, 13 back, which was a blessing because had it been one of those current
Yeah,
courses that was, there's zero
like
chance I'm going to finish. Zero chance. But it was like, once you're out there, you're like,
you
well,
got to get
now like
back.
the only place you're going to go is to the finish line. So I stopped in a porta potty and I just remember like looking at both my knees and they were just like swollen,
So swollen. Oh,
I mean,
God.
coconuts. I mean, it was so bad. And so I was like, well, I was like, I have time. I'll just walk all the way back. And I found another young gal whose Achilles was killing her. And so we just like walked and we walked for hours. We just shared life stories, and we're like, and then we'd pick a tree. We're like, let's run to that tree. And it's 10 steps to like run to the tree. And we're like, yeah, that's enough. Walk. But like I finished and I tell you what, like it was one of the coolest feelings ever, right? Like even though it was by far my slowest Ironman, but it was the biggest accomplishment
Yeah.
that like I could feel because I remember the day before when they were setting up like the finish line and the banner and all of that. And I remember like looking at that finish line banner and it was a legit question in my mind. Like, I wonder if I'm going to get here tomorrow. Right. Like I had no confidence that I was going to get there. It was more like, I don't know, like I'll try and I'll see what happens. But I didn't enter that race going like, I will finish at all costs. Like I entered that race and just being like, I don't know, let's just see what happens. And like, I don't know if I can do this or not.
Hmm.
And then, and the next day I went into some like little tattoo parlor there, like in Penticton. And I thought that I was going to be, so this is 1997. So before anybody judges me for my M. Dot tattoo, I will preface this that it was 1997 and it didn't feel like an evil corporation back then. Like I didn't feel like I'm like tattooing the
Right.
logo of an
It was
evil
different.
corporation like on
Yeah.
my skin. But I just got like this little M. Dot, it's a little blue M. Dot tattoo and it's like on my upper thigh. But like I really thought that I was being right. Like I was like, oh, like as if nobody else is going to think about this, right? Like only me. I walked in that
Well, it
tattoo
was,
parlor, and the guy was so bored out of his mind. He's like, "Oh God, another M. Dot tattoo." He goes, "I've done 7 of these today." I was like, "What?"
that's funny. I mean, I know a lot of, I have, friends, acquaintances that have M dot tattoos. Most of them prior to like, I would say 2005, 2006. Like, yeah. So I think the pre 90s, early 2000s, like no judgment. No, because it was different. It was a
Yeah,
totally
like it was
different
cool back then,
situation.
you
It was
guys.
cool. It was cool. Now we will judge you. Sorry.
But it's only like really little, and it's on my upper thigh. Like the only way you can really see it is if I'm like wearing a swimsuit, right? And even then, you'd kind of have to look, and it's sort of blurry at this point.
Yeah.
And like I'm looking at it now, it's just little to take a picture of it. But anyway,
Well,
yeah. So
no,
there
I,
you
I
go,
love
my
it. That's
origin
great.
story.
Yeah. Oh, then, and you have done how, 19? How many Ironmans have you done?
18.
18, 18. Okay. Yeah.
Can I tell you a little story about that too, which would be sort of like, well, there's a couple stories about that. First, Just last week, I was at the pool swimming, which, well, I'm always at the pool swimming, but here there are occasionally what we get are people that show up at the pool who are trying to learn how to swim well enough to pass a firefighter test. Right. And so
Yeah.
for whatever
Yeah.
reason, like we just get like a fair amount of those people. So they tend to be like young local guys in their 20s. You know, they can make their way through the water, but like they're not really accomplished swimmers. But they have to be able to swim 100 meters and then dive down to the bottom of the pool and like pick up a brick and bring it back to the surface. And they have like 2.5 minutes or something to complete all of that. Anyway, so I see those people all the time. And at one point, like older man, he stopped me while I was swimming. This is like, I don't know, a month ago. He stopped me while I was swimming and he goes, "You look like you know what you're doing." And he said, "Can you help my grandson learn how to swim? Because he's trying to pass his firefighter's test." And I was like, I got time. This is fine. Right. So like I go over and I spent probably a half an hour giving this guy just like a free impromptu swim,
Nice. Yeah.
like lesson or whatever. And he was really grateful. And so was his grandpa. Like they were listening really intently. I mean, it just like, it was like, that feels good or whatever. Anyway, and I was like, I hope you pass your test. And I didn't see him again. But last week, I saw another guy who was similar. And at the end of the swim, I was like getting ready to go home. And then he said something. He goes, "I think you helped my cousin try to," because he was there like trying to like do the firefighter test or whatever. He goes, "I think you helped did you help my cousin?" And I was like, "I think probably, like, I mean, I help anybody who asks." So anyway, he introduced it. He goes, "Oh yeah, he told me." I mean, so this guy was apparently so excited about everything that I taught him that he went home and told his whole family.
That's awesome.
And so the second guy that I met last week, he goes, "Oh yeah, he said that you did Ironmans. You did like 3 Ironmans."
You're like, actually.
I kind of looked at him and like I probably the look on my face like told him that like it was more. He goes, "Oh, or more than that." And I was like, 18. I lost it. And it's so funny because like the reason that I share that is because while I was doing all of those, like I didn't even feel proud of myself, right? Like I didn't feel like I wasn't trying to accomplish anything major. I wasn't trying to like be the person that 20 years from now is going to go, "I did 18 Ironman." Like it just was a thing that I did, and over time it just all adds up. But when seeing the look on this kid's face, when he said three, like, cause he thought three was a giant deal. So when
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, she was like 18." He was like, "Oh my God." So
Yeah.
yeah, that was 18.
Yeah, I feel the same. Oh, and I think sometimes I think, I did 12 and I'm like, that was a lot of money. Mm.
Yeah.
Like again, something I did, I was never, I mean, I loved it. I loved racing. And I think you did too. And that's why you did so many. It wasn't like I was trying to get to any number or try to get to, legacy or anything like that. It was like, I really just loved racing. But now I'm like, wow, I did spend a lot of money. Was it worth it? I don't know.
It was like I feel like being in a place where I am now is because it's basically like pick a mistake that you can make in a
Oh
triathlon,
yeah.
and like I've made it, right, and like likely
Mm.
so have you, which was like that's a nice little segment. So Mikki, tell us about a race where you made a mistake and learned something. It's an open-ended question, but I bet you can
No,
think of something.
so I'm like,
You never made
I
mistakes in
like,
races?
no,
Am I
I
the
mean,
only
I'm
one who
sure.
makes mistakes in races?
I am sure that I have, right? I'm sure that I have. But I will say, like, I'm an executor. Like, I am very detailed in planning, not just planning, but like having the backup plan. Like, if your nutrition goes south, and I learned that from my first coach and my second coach. And I feel like I've had really good tutelage, right?
Mm.
Of this is what you do. I'm trying to think. I mean, I know that I've made some mistakes, but like I've
That's a
never had a
good plug for
nutritional.
coaches, basically. You're like, the coach guided me out of like all those mistakes that Michelle made. You don't have to make those. Just hire a coach before you experiment on your own. And
I
totally.
mean, yeah, I mean, God, I mean, I'm really,
Can you think of any races that was like you were disappointed or like that was a bad race? And if so, why?
I know, and this makes me sound like an arrogant asshole. I'm sorry. There was times that I did not have the greatest disappointment for me in my racing career was that I didn't allocate the time to train adequately. But once, like, I could always drain the gas tank, right? The bucket very effectively. In fact, I remember some of my last races, I think my Lucho, who was coaching me at the time, I had a really rough summer and I was supposed to do 4 Ironmans for my 40th birthday. I had to drop out of one for personal reasons, but I decided to do three and one each month. So I would basically be racing it was Wisconsin, then I did Louisville, and then I did Arizona. And for Wisconsin, I went in with like nothing, like very, very, like I like kind of off the couch. And he was like, afterwards. So I finished, I think I was like around like 11, whatever, 11:45, 11:30. I don't even remember. Right. He's like, I thought you'd be like 15, 16 hours, like barely making the cutoff. Right. And so I really, it's like one, I mean, I had huge base from years of training and I know how to even that in that race, I had no heart rate, no power. The power meter died and the heart rate monitor didn't connect. And so I went totally by feel. And I just over the years, but I will even say like, I just know how to delve it out appropriately and to get the most out of what I have. So when I would cross the finish line for some races, and I had races I was disappointed in, but it was not the race. I was disappointed in myself because I didn't allocate the time to train effectively to race
Mm.
well. So my spread in Ironman times are very close. Like they're I think my first Ironman was around 12 hours, probably top 20-ish, and my best was a 10:30 and most of them were like 11 hours, 11:30, 11:15, like very few bad races and I had like one kind of standout race and that race took a lot for me to train. Like I am definitely a high volume and I need a lot of volume to be able to make the breakthroughs. I can off the couch it and I can like kind of do what a lot of people would consider normal training and I don't make progress there. So I'm trying to think of like where I really screwed up on a race. If anything, I crossed the line. I was like, well, I did the best I could given what I put into this race build. I did never have like a real a lifestyle that would allow me to train the way that I needed to train to make progress. And that was the biggest disappointment for me over the years. Sadly, I can tell you races that I did not like and where I suffer, right? Like I suffer in the heat and there's no amount of telling me like I know you can train better for the heat and you can get heat adapted and I'm like no, screw that, I don't want to. I just won't race in the heat. Like that's fine. So I feel yeah again like I don't want to sound like an arrogant asshole, but I think I've really had really good coaches and I have an ability for whatever reason to know how to delve out the appropriate effort for where I'm at to get the
Hmm.
most out of myself. Like maybe even above, like even my first coach was like, you're just an executor. You go above and beyond where I think you're gonna go. And you even maybe even raising the bar a little bit from where I thought you would be based on your training. So and that's not common. I mean, a lot of
It's
folks I
not.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of folks will ride and run way faster and think that they can do that in a race, whereas I'm totally content staying in the right ranges, using zone two, math, whatever those paces are, whatever those powers are. And then come race day, like I'm in it. I'm in it to win it for what I can do. And I'm trying to even think like I never even really had low spots. I'm just like a get to the line as fast as possible type of athlete. I don't, and I've struggled as a coach to try to identify with athletes that struggle with mindset because they're like, well, I think I gave up on myself. And I'm like, I don't know what that looks like. I've literally like, I mean, I will, again, like I will be crawling across the line once I toe the line every time, I mean, I will pull out if I'm, in a very risky health situation, but I don't know, like I've just got that mindset that it's like, it's go time and I'm in it. And, when I cross the line, I've not often been proud of the race because I know that I could do better if I gave myself the opportunity. That's kind of,
But in your
you know,
mind, it was like that opportunity was in training, not like
right,
at mile 10 or whatever.
right. But what I think I also, for whatever reason, I don't think I was ever coached this. I also did not take my training into that race, right? Like I didn't judge, okay, well, I didn't get that long run in, or I didn't get as many long rides in. And, a lot of athletes I think will say, well, then therefore I take the effort down a notch or I judge they get in the negative headspace of judging themselves. Well, I'm going to give up because, well, I just didn't have the good build. It's like, I kind of just let it go or I ignored it that it doesn't really make sense, right? Because I also knew how to then delve out. I didn't go above where I thought I was, even for races where I had raced well, and then like the next year I was not at the same fitness level. Mm, I still knew how to spread the peanut butter on as thin as I needed to get across the line as fast as possible,
Yeah.
given the build that I had. And I don't know, I don't even know if my coaches could tell me why I did that. Like, because again, Lucha was like, I thought you'd be like 15 hours. I'm like, he's like, I'm like floored that you could pull that off. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I like to race when I get into it. But yeah. So that makes me sound like arrogant. I'm sorry, guys
No, not at
listening. I'm
all.
really not, but
It's a gift, I think, is what it is. Because I would say at this point now in my life, at 51, if I were to go back and race again, I'm pretty confident I could do it the way that you described it, right? Where you'd be like, I have a really clear understanding of whatever fitness level I have, whether it's high or low. I know what my fitness level is. I know what's sustainable and what's not. I know how costly efforts are when you like sprint up the hill or whatever. I did not know that stuff. It might have been because, so like, if we think about like our differences in the way that we entered the sport, right? Like, so if you
Mhm.
entered the sport and
Yeah,
had guidance that
I
knew
did.
what
Yeah.
they were doing from the beginning, whereas like when I entered the sport, nobody knew
Yeah.
anything, right? Like none of us,
Right.
like even if you would have said like, I didn't even have a clear understanding of what a threshold was, right? Like I was just like, no one knew. We were like, you just, I mean, you learned what it was by like failing because you went over it, like too much and like, oh, actually, like that's not sustainable. Um, yeah, like at this point, I feel like that being able to pace myself for
Hmm.
whatever distance I'm going is a skill, but that is something I had to learn over and over and over and over and over through trial and error, like through
Yeah.
failure kind of thing,
Yeah.
um, to learn that.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
what do you have an example of like somewhere like a learning opportunity in a race that from one of your trial and errors that
yeah, I mean, there's
how's
so
yeah.
many of you like, oh, we could just spend the rest of the podcast talking about my race failures. But like, I mean, I will say one of the more impactful ones, you mentioned heat, like racing in the heat. And I live in Hawaii. And I also would say, like, interestingly enough, like, I don't think I'm that good in heat. And my theory of that now is, okay, let me change. So it's not a theory, it's a hypothesis.
There you
It's
go.
not been proven. This is my hypothesis is that like I have overexposed myself
Hmm.
to heat and that I've had too many negative experience, like too much exposure pushing past some sort of heat threshold to a point where, my brain was like, absolutely not, stop doing this,
Hmm.
right? Like, so my sweat rate's really high.
Hmm.
I mean, the amount of times that I, like in the middle of a 20-mile run, would be like sitting under the shade of a tree,
Ooh,
dreaming
yeah.
about a Coke from McDonald's or whatever. Because also, like when I was doing the bulk of my training for Ironman, like we knew about fueling, like we knew we were supposed to fuel, but I wouldn't say I understood it in a really scientific way. It was more like I understood it in an anecdotal way,
Hmm.
and so I way under fueled, hydrated, under, like not enough electrolytes, like all the things. And
Hmm.
at one point, I remember having some sort of aha realization that there is a difference between being fatigued and being depleted.
Hmm.
But like if you don't know the difference between being fatigued and being depleted, like you would just think it's fatigued. And so I, for years, misinterpreted being depleted with not being fit enough, right? Because
Yeah.
like so like as I'm like failing, unquote, like a workout or a race or whatever, when I didn't meet my own expectations of like what I thought I should have been able to do, I every time the default was like I'm just not fit enough, so I have to train more, I have to train harder. And like
Hmm.
in some cases that's true.
Right.
In my case,
But
I looking back now, I'm like, it wasn't like I wasn't fit enough. It wasn't just me being fatigued. It was me being depleted.
hmm.
And so I have a really specific memory of racing the 70 point. I don't remember what year it was. I did it like 13, 14 times, probably something like 2016, 15, 16, I don't know.
Hmm.
After sweat tests had come out.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, and I hadn't taken one yet, but like I was at mile 10-ish and just walking because literally like my muscles would not do the contract relax cycle anymore.
Ooh,
Right, like
yeah.
like I like Literally, my legs had completely given up on me, and it wasn't like there wasn't a choice. It wasn't like um, I'm just not tough enough, or I'm not like I've heard athletes say like, "Oh, I get a cramp and I just run through it." Like, well, I don't know how you do that. When I get a cramp, I like physically
Yeah.
like it doesn't. Like, I can't take a running step. Like the pain is too much. Like it's a like I'm completely stuck and can't move. And so anyway, I remember like walking past it, and I had a major aha during that race of like because I'm looking at the aid stations, and I just knew I'm like my body's missing something. Like there's something that I'm missing because I was watching then, because again, I live in Hawaii. This is a Hawaii race. So as people were running by me, they were like my friends, my training partners, my competitors. Like I knew a lot of them who were running by. And I just remember being so jealous that like her legs are still working. I
Yeah.
wish my legs worked, but like literally my legs aren't working. And I had some sort of, it was like a gut instinct almost, but it was like, I'm missing something. Like this is a
Hmm.
chemical imbalance that's
Yeah.
happening in my body right now that's
Yeah.
causing like a muscular contraction to misfire. Like it's not working. And so it was after that that I did my first sweat test. And it was when
Hmm.
I got the results back from that that was like, it was so eye opening for me to be like, oh my gosh, okay. And it honestly was, it's a word I'm looking for. Like, it was like almost redemptive or like it was relieving. It was something like it made me feel better to know like what my sweat rate was and like how much sodium I was actually losing. Not only because then I had an avenue to try to help myself and fix it, but also it removed some of like the feeling of personal failure I had, right? Like when I was in a race and you're just like, I don't know, my legs just completely stopped working and I couldn't do it anymore. There's a degree in there, like if you're not aware of where that's coming from, that you can feel like I'm a loser or I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just not good
Yeah.
enough and I suck at this and why do I bother and blah, blah, blah. When the reality is it's like, okay, so in order for our muscles to function properly, we need enough fluids, we need the right balance of electrolytes, like we need the glucose, we need like all the things. And when you don't have that, you're depleted. And it's not a matter of you need to then train harder. It's actually you need to be smarter about the way that you're replenishing your
Hmm.
body. And I needed to do that too. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, major lesson there. And if we were to say, if we were going to ask a question like of, what's something you wish you would have known earlier in your career, and it's unfair even for me to ask that about myself because when I say like I didn't know, well, guess what? Nobody else did either.
Hmm.
Like, and I can say that without being like judgmental on myself that like I didn't know, nobody knew. But man, I do wonder that like if I could go back and race like with the body that I had in my late 30s with the knowledge and
Oh,
mindset that I have now. Like, and knowledge and mindset, I would put in two different categories, right? Like where, like I know I have the knowledge of knowing exactly how to do it well, and I have a mindset that is way healthier than I had back then. So it's like, man, if I could take like the knowledge, the mindset, and then with my old body, that would be
this is what
really cool.
this is what makes you like such a you can coach that person. I know you can't
Mhm.
be that person, right? But you can impart that mindset, wisdom, and the mindset and the knowledge, the wisdom all combined maybe to that person and allow them to, maybe achieve what you were able to, right? I think of that for myself. Able to help younger athletes. I have an athlete right now I'm working with that's mid 30s, and yeah, I mean, I think a lot of potential and trying to delve it out, right, appropriately based on their life and yeah, I mean, I could go down that avenue of I totally agree. I think for me, like I think I had well, I mean, there's mindset shifts that have happened for sure. I think, going back to the whole Kona debate, right? Like I did get tied up in that, and I wish I had just raced to race. Like it was kind of always in the back of my mind, even when I didn't have good builds. I kind of knew, like, oh, this is going to be another disappointment because I know I'm not where I mean, I'm not going to win my age group, right? And I've got to win my age group to get to Kona, and that's unlikely to happen with the build you just had. Anyways, could go down
Would
that
you ever
path,
leave a
right?
race like, and I'm genuinely curious about this question. Like, would you ever leave a race that was a good race for you, but like you landed fourth or fifth, and so therefore didn't qualify for Kona? And so like where it actually was a good race for you, but because it wasn't Kona qualifying, like, was there a feeling of failure involved in that? Or were you able to like separate? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, cause
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
like there can be like, look, that was the best you could do. And like, you should be really proud of that, but it didn't like meet this criteria that somebody else set for like a world championship qualification. Then how did you manage that?
well, yeah, I mean, the one time I really felt like I gave myself a chance and I landed fifth. And that was my kind of breakthrough race. And it took a lot. It took a lot. I think I've talked about it, like multiple training camps, multiple, my good friend Ellen and I did a 40-hour training week. I mean, we did epic training, and it finally got me high. I pushed myself to the point where I could make the gains that I needed. I couldn't have done anything more in that race. I mean, I really couldn't have. And so when I landed at fifth, and there was, I think, two places, and first was still 20 minutes ahead of me. I mean, I gave it all I had. I was not disappointed. I didn't, it wasn't, I was proud of the race, and I was proud of what I did. And I don't think Kona really entered into my mind in that case. In other cases where I didn't have good builds and I knew that, at the
Mm,
time, I was supposed to be Kona qualified to be a good coach, right? That's what I was kind of being told. So when I couldn't get the build because my life was not conducive to training the way I needed to train, I felt bad. I felt like maybe it was, I mean, I still loved racing, but it's a double-edged sword sometimes when you've got that hanging over you that, in hindsight wasn't all me either. I mean, I took it on. You never, even when someone mentions it, right? Like you have to take it on yourself. And I did. I took it on willingly that, oh yeah, this is going to make me a better coach and a better athlete, and I will have arrived, right? And I wish I hadn't had that mindset for sure.
yeah, because the reality is it's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I knew that then. I knew that then, but there's so much hype. I mean, right? There's so much
Yeah.
hype around Kona. And when you've gone to Kona, oh, if you're not Kona qualified, why are you even coaching? It's like,
Hmm.
which by the way, I talked to one of my athletes who did go to Kona 2023, and I was like, I'm so glad that you went. She's like, I am too. And I'm so sad that so many other women that are competitive that are not going to have that
Hmm.
opportunity now. So not to
Hmm.
digress back into Kona, but I mean, it does come up in my both of our paths. So, and will
Yeah,
be a thing for the future of the women in our sport. So yeah. Anyways, what
get
other,
that.
like, let's see. Yeah, with that, what
Well, no,
other?
there was a segue that you just said.
Oh
You
yeah.
talked about epic training, and I'm like, okay,
Oh.
so like let's dive into this. So like let's share some like, and what's funny is that I don't think about these things that often, but when you know how like, and this is just how our brains work, like this retrieval system where you give
Mhm.
your brain a task to like think about this thing. You're like, oh, I don't remember like epic training days. And then as soon as you think of one, it's like, oh, and there was that one.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, remember that camp? And like, oh yeah, and I did that
Yeah.
too. And remember when I did, anyway, so like, let's share a couple of like pick out an epic, it could be an epic session, an epic week, or epic, whatever, like something epic. And
Yeah.
like, what did you learn from it?
Yeah. Well, I will have to say, my highlight was that 40, I think it was literally Garmin hour, 40 hours of training, maybe even 40, maybe even over 40 hours. And what I really loved about that camp is that
Where were you? Tell it, like
so
go
it was
back and
in
like tell the story.
like physical, like we were in California training under our coach at the time, and mid California area, great riding. And the whole premise, so this was to prep my friend Ellen for Kona, and she kind of wanted me to tag along. And I will say Ellen's a better athlete than I am, and I was like, I can't, I'm not even in good enough shape to do this. Like I'm probably at the time I was a little bit better swimmer, maybe a little bit stronger. She was just always been a better cyclist, and our run was pretty comparable. And so, I mean, we were decently matched in terms of training partners. And that was why so it wasn't a huge camp. It was basically her and I and our coach. And the premise was Ellen, I don't think she would care if I say this, she's always had some stomach issues, a little bit of GI upset. Fueling's been more of an issue for her. And so she wanted to test this, right? She wanted to not know what we were doing. Let's just do it on the fly so I can see how I can adapt. And I mean, really, she's very wise in how she wanted to have our coach do this camp and manage this camp for us. So it was like, but at the same time, it was like, what do you think we're going to do today? I'm like, I don't know. I'm good with going on the fly, right? Like I just show up. I have the gut of steel. So I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. Like maybe we'll ride 100 miles. Maybe we'll run a marathon. Maybe I have no idea, right? And it was always this like, what do you think we're going to do today? And do you think she's going to have us do a full Ironman? And we didn't do a full Ironman. So but I think I loved that style of camp. I loved the show up, don't know. It was kind of like going back to high school in track practice, where you just show up at the track and you didn't know if you're going to be puking at the end of the day. You don't know if you're going out for an easy run. You just showed up and you're just ready to work. And I love that. I'm totally fine to go on the fly. I don't need a plan. Just show up. I'm ready to work. So one of the sessions that I loved. And so, yeah, we did a ton of training. And midway through, our coach basically had us run 800s around a block. And she had different protocols, but they were hard. They were like threshold 800s. At first it was like the rest was the time it took for the other person to do the 800. We were tag teaming it.
Mm.
So your rest was like 2 minutes, but like and it was really cool. We were like checking our heart rate at the end of the interval, and then checking our resting heart rate to see how well we were recovering. And then and there was no end point. It wasn't like you're going to do 20 of these. It wasn't like you're going to do 30 of these, right? Like you just literally, you're just going until she decides you're going to switch it up. So then we started switching it up too, because the recovery was too long. So then we started switching up. So same paces, which were still pretty hard. We're doing like 7, whatever threshold pace into, it wasn't VO2 max. It was definitely threshold. And instead of waiting for the next person to come around, it was like you only get a 90-second rest, right? And how long can you do that? And I would have to go back and look how many we did, but it was like 20 miles. That's not really an exaggeration. It's a shit ton of very difficult, very hard running. This was, after like day 4 of, you've ridden well over a couple 100 miles and done long runs we did 2 10K swims that week. We both loved it. Came away, I was like, I wish that I could do this every month. It was fantastic. That was, but yeah, that kind of like, don't know when you're going to stop, don't know when the last one will be. You just literally keep laying it on the line until your coach tells you you're done. And yeah, I was like all about it. I don't know if Ellen was. I'd have to ask her if she was all about it or not, or if she hated it.
Maybe she'll comment. Ellen, if you're
Yeah,
listening, make a
yeah,
comment and let us know.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
funny. Because that is, I mean, when the studies are done on like human psychology, that is the hardest scenario to be in when you don't know where the
yeah.
endpoint is. Like, as far as like if you're trying to mess with somebody's mind, to not take away the information about where's the endpoint
Hmm.
is genuinely the hardest thing for a human to do. Because like you
Yeah.
don't know how to pace yourself on those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we even cut the rest down because we were, she was really smart. Our coach was really good about cutting the rest down to know like when she was really stressing us and like when we
Hmm.
started, and the paces, really didn't come down a whole lot. I think at the end, she finally called it when our paces started to really drop off or our finishing heart rate got to like, you know,
Hmm.
way, way redlining. So, but it was a lot. It
Hmm.
was a lot of 800s. So yeah. Tell me about, yeah.
I pull similar things, even like currently now, and like not as epic, but just as we're thinking about that same mindset. I mean, when I'm doing a set in the pool currently right
Hmm.
now, there's times where I'll think I have an idea of how many intervals I want to do. And then there's times where I'll be swimming and I'm thinking like, oh my, I think I'm getting tired. And I think and I'm trying to decide like, am I digging a hole or like, am I able to do this or not? And I'll make like deals with myself. It's sort of like, I know what pace I've been holding. And it's like, if I hit that pace or better, I keep going. And if I slow down to like, I'll pick a pace in my head that's based on like that day. Like, what have I been doing that day? And if it's like, if I slow down by 1 or 2 seconds
Hmm.
and it's feeling like I'm falling apart, then like, okay,
Then
I'll cut
you
it and be
cut
like,
it.
that's
Yeah.
enough. And they say that's done. And almost universally, the funny part about that is that like, I employ that tactic as like a way for me to justify stopping because I'm tired and it's uncomfortable. So I'll tell myself like if I can't hit that pace, then this is over. But like every single time I come in and I look and I'm like I hit the pace, I'm like shit, I gotta go again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't, like it's almost like I was like looking for the reason to stop or like, and it's like oh actually no, it just feels bad, but you're still doing it. So I
Yeah.
keep
No, I love
going.
it. I love it.
So
I
yeah, I've
love
done
those
that.
kinds of, yeah, I love those kinds of sets. I try, it is harder to do, I think. Well, it's harder to coach those. I commonly give that kind of set, like when your pace falls below a certain threshold, right? Like you're 10 seconds slow or whatever, I want you to cut it, right? And I
Mhm.
often feel like it's harder for athletes to cut it, right? Or they, but it
Well, it
really
feels like a
is like,
failure, right? Like
yeah,
the
it
feels
does.
like
It
I'm
does.
failing. And so
Yeah.
like nobody wants to feel like a failure.
But
And so,
it's really,
but if you can
yeah,
be objective about it and be
right,
like, I played
right.
a pacing game with my master's group in the last couple of months where it was a set where I think they started hundreds on, I don't remember what we started on, like, 145 or 150. This is for like my fastest group. Actually, it might have even been like 2 minutes. So I was like, you're going to start at this pace, and then every single 100, you're going to subtract 5 seconds, right? So the
Okay.
first one's on two
Yeah.
minutes, and then 155, 150, 145, 140, and it goes all the way down. And then whenever you can't make it, like when you didn't make it, then what you're going to do is you're just going to do a 75. So you're going to keep swimming, but you're just
Hmm.
going to do a
Just
75
75.
instead of
Yep.
like you can't make it on 120. Fine, but you
Right.
can do a 75 on 120.
Yeah.
So while like in the next lane over, they're still doing 100, but you're going to do the 75, and this is on 120 and then 115 or whatever. And like there's one gal who is just, she's a master at pacing. And I had a feeling that she would be the last one swimming because I was basically like, everybody keeps swimming until the last person doesn't make a send off, and you'll just cut to 75s at that point. And what was interesting is that the gal that made it the furthest was so good about going so easy, especially like in the middle parts, right? So, like when it got down to sort of like 130, she was coming in at like 126. And but the thing is, then when it was 125, she would come in on like 122, and then so she just kept increasing her pace in almost a way that she was getting very little rest at the wall. But here's the thing: like she made the 105, so
Yeah.
like when it was time to swim a 103. She knew it and she swam the 103. What she didn't do, what a lot of other people did, was like they're like even when it got down to 130, they're still swimming like pretty hard. And so they where it was kind of like when the send off gives you rest, don't
Right.
push the pace on that, right?
Right.
Like, and so
No. Oh
and I
my,
think it
yeah.
was genuinely like the reason she made it as far as she did was because she was very smart about when she was choosing to work,
Hmm.
right? Like she
Hmm.
only worked when it was mandatory to work.
Yeah.
And until then, she did the least amount of work
That's so
necessary to
wise.
like do the thing. Yeah. And it was fun for me, like as a coach to stand there on deck and like watch how that all played out.
I love it.
But
Yeah. That's great.
yeah, if I
Well,
think about, I
yeah.
mean, there's so
Yeah.
many epic
Tell
too.
me.
Like, oh man,
Yeah.
like let me even pick one. A couple stories. So like in different ways, I have two stories and they're different ways. And these are both driven by me, like not by a coach telling me what to do, but like, us just deciding to like do something epic. So when I was a pretty new, well, let's see, no, it must have been like in the early, I don't know, 1999, 2000, 2001 time frame, something like that. I was living in Arizona and just learning how to do long distance triathlon, which in our mind just involved like riding your bike longer. Just like how long do you ride? And we did it was like a group of friends, there were four of us that decided to ride our bikes from Phoenix to Tucson and then back the next day.
Fun.
And I think like what you need to know about this time too, like the reason that this stands out to me as like epic training is because like we didn't have cell phones. So like
Love it.
just imagine today, like I'm trying to
I
imagine
know.
today doing like what we chose to do back then. Where I mean, I'm sure we must have had a flat kit with us. I don't think anybody flatted, but like, so there's four of us and we it's about 125 miles to ride down to Tucson. We literally just packed a backpack with a credit card and a change of clothes and a new cycling kit, for tomorrow with like some cash or money or whatever. And I remember, and I was the weakest one of the four, right? Like, so like my job was just to draft. And I had a different boyfriend at the time, not the one that got me into triathlon, but a different triathlete. He was a jerk. I'll
Mm.
just straight up say it. He would get mad at me when I would get dropped, and he would be
Those are
like,
always,
you have to stay on my wheel. And I'm like dying. I'm like too
You
tired.
need to slow
And
down,
so like,
right? Like,
they're like, all right, yeah,
yeah.
these are the days are like, we're just having like this massive fight, like out on the middle
God.
of the road in the desert, and he's just like, you got to stay on my wheel. I'm like, you got to slow down. You know what I mean? Like, I can't, like, we're riding. I'm tired, and we weren't feeling right, of course, right? Because like we didn't know anything about how to do that. But like I remember, there's like stopping at like Taco Bell or Wendy's, or like we would go from like town to town. And these are like little towns in the middle of nowhere,
Right.
and we're just like looking at a map because like we don't have GPS or anything. We literally had like printed maps that were
It's
like looking
awesome.
at the line, and it's like, well, take the thin blue line because the thick one is probably too much traffic, right? So we're taking like side roads, frontage roads, whatever, like riding down to Tucson. We check into some like shitty Motel 6 kind of, roach infested, like go out to dinner, have a margarita or two, sleep overnight, put our backpacks on the next day, like ride your way back. But, so like in a weekend, we rode 250 miles in 2 days, just
Nice.
stopping at Wendy's for like French fries.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
Back
Except for the
then,
jerk.
yeah, except for him.
Except for the
Well, and I
jerk.
remember at one point we did kind of figure it out where it was kind of like he figured out the pace that he needed to ride because he was basically saying like he was frustrated because he's thinking I can't get there. He wasn't going to leave me behind. He's like I can't get there until you get there, so we have to work together as a team to be as efficient as we can. So he figured out the pace that he needed to ride at that I could actually still hang on. And then he was like, if you're falling off, you have to tell me, right? Because if you don't tell me and you just fall off, then I'm riding and now all of a sudden you're gone and now I have to wait for you. I'm like, okay, sorry, you had to wait for me. Anyway, so that was just more like epic adventure that I can't even imagine doing today, like without a cell phone. Like
Yeah.
I just like it just feels like it would be maybe it'd be too dangerous. I don't know. Maybe it's just in my imagination that it would be too dangerous. But then there was another time that so this was when I was living in Hawaii. It must have been like 2012, 2013-ish time frame. Um, I had a girlfriend that was a training partner of mine in swimming. We were about dead even. Like she might have been a little bit faster than me, but we were even enough that we could train together a lot. And we decided to just experiment and see that if we swam 50,000 meters in 8 days, like that was our, like the challenge that we just presented to ourselves. And it was a straight up curiosity thing to be like, what happens, right? Like, how does it go over the course of 8 days if we swim 50K? And so I was coaching her at the time. So I planned out like what the sets were. And some of them was in the ocean. We would do like 10K ocean swims on a Saturday kind of thing. But what was interesting about that is a couple things. We had to go way out of our way to find like a pool that was open on a
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon. There were times where we were swimming doubles because like the pool was only open for,
For an
an hour and a
hour.
half block
Yeah.
here kind of thing. And so we'd be like, all right, well, we're going to swim, 4K in the morning and then 5K in the afternoon and then, whatever. And then I did plan a couple of easier days sort of in the middle, like expecting, we would have some fatigue. But basically, I built it all out as a plan and then just thought, like, let's just see what happens if we follow through on this. And it felt like unknown territory, which is like why it was cool and why I remember it, because it was like, I genuinely don't know how this is going to go. But we did it in a way where we did a benchmark set on day one, and then we repeated that set on day 8.
Mm.
And we marked it down. So we did, I don't remember if it was 4 or 5 times 1K, either 4 or 5 times 1K as a workout. And it was descend 1 to 4, descend 1 to 5. And so and we did that. So basically, I guess my point is we had the fitness to do 5 times 1K, descend 1 to 5 before we started this epic
Hmm.
50K battle.
Right, right,
Like so,
right.
so fitness was solid to start, and we both wrote down our splits of like what those were, and then we swam, another 40K. And what was interesting is that we felt the fatigue on days 3 and 4 was
Okay.
super legit, right? Like I mean,
Yeah.
like we were really tired. Right? I just remember being like I remember eating just so like I was eating like frosting out of a jar. You know what I mean? Just like
Gross.
it was so gross. Like, but it was like in between. Like I'm just like I'm so hungry, but like I'm so tired. Like I can't even lift my arms to like
To
make
cook.
myself
Yeah.
food. You know what I mean? Like I just the exhaustion level was super legit, and I was eating really really gross stuff, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
But then what we learned about this, and what was interesting, the two of us doing it together, is that we both had the exact same experience, where it was like, we started at the level we started at. There was a legit
Dip,
dip
dip.
in like energy and performance. We were both just like, oh my God, like this is terrible. This is so bad. And I expected it to just continue to get worse. But what we had planned was on day 8, we're going to do that 5 times 1K again, descend 1 to 5, and like, let's just see. By the time we got to day 8, both of us were just absolutely on fire. And we both, it was like subtract 20 seconds from every single 1K you did, from like the starting pace to the ending pace. And we both, like, it would have been interesting if it like only would have been me. I would have been like, I don't know, maybe I'm in N=1 and like this isn't a
Hmm.
normal experience. But the fact that she experienced it too in the exact same way made me think
Yeah.
there's something about our physiology of like what we
Yeah.
learned, that like if you kind of push through that dip, the
Hmm.
lull or the fatigue, you can push through that and come out way stronger on the other side. And I think we see that in like, I've never done like the race across America, but I've heard
Hmm.
stories of riders who will do that, right? And they're riding, thousands of miles over the course of, what is it, 10 days or
Yeah.
however long it takes them to do it.
Yeah.
But they'll say like you get really, really tired sort of on
Hmm.
day 3, 4, 5. And then if you just like keep riding and you push through that, it's like you're riding yourself into shape and it just gets better
Yeah.
and stronger.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like I've experienced that
Hmm.
in a way that it didn't feel super risky because it was swimming. Like, I don't know if that would be a smart thing to try to do with running.
Yeah.
Probably like depending on what level you're at and like how efficient of a runner are you? What are your biomechanics? Like how long have you been running and that kind of thing. It felt like a safe experiment to do swimming because it just, you're not likely to injure yourself with that. But that was one of the, I remember being really, really proud of like those 8 days. And a lot of it was because of what we learned, right? It was like, oh, I'm so much
Yeah.
stronger than I thought I was, right? Or
Yeah.
like that there's, but also then I would be like, here's my caveat, be careful. I'm not saying like always just like, oh, you're in fatigue, just push right through it. Like that's not always the smartest thing to do, but in some cases you can, and we did, and it was cool.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's also I assume at the time you guys, maybe had taken some lower work, right? Like maybe your life stress wasn't that high, right? Like when you do a training
Yeah.
camp, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, to do 40 hours, I mean, I wasn't working at all, right? Like I might have been answering some emails here and there, but and I've had similar experiences with different training camps where like, yeah, the first couple of when the camp was like 7-ish days, 7, 8 days, which I think, yeah, the camp we did, Ellen and I did, it was about 7, it was a full week, 7 days. And so, yeah, you can push through, but yeah, the caveat, right, is if you're trying to work and hold on your family life and like, I mean, it just doesn't, yeah, it usually will be more of you might see a little improvement, right? Like we did, right, over these epic training camps, but for the long haul, you can't continue to expect that same increase in fitness. I do think swimming is a little bit different in terms of like the physiology, and cycling too a little bit. Running, I don't, yeah, I think it's more risky for sure. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I would agree with that.
yeah. Sorry, I got some puppies that are barking, and I
The
don't know
dogs are
why.
telling you it's time, mom.
Well, but we have so many more questions I have to. Okay, let's do a couple of like just quickie ones, right? Like I like
Yeah.
our
Okay.
question about. Okay, you're going on your into your 80-mile ride, whatever. You're 40 miles in your 80-mile ride. You stop at a gas station. What do you get?
Okay, like currently right now, and this is like confession time by Michelle. This is the only time that I drink a Monster energy drink.
Mm.
Like I don't do Monsters normally, but I will drink a Monster energy drink. But I will also look for sugar because like my problem with Monsters is commonly like they don't have any sugar. I'm like I want sugar too. So yeah, typically it's like a Monster and a Snickers bar.
Hmm.
Back in the day, I will tell you when I was in Arizona, I remember eating corn nuts. Like I would go in, there was I think it was a Circle K in Arizona. That's what they had there. So we would stop at the Circle K and I would get this package of corn nuts and I would open them up because they're salty, right? And so I'd stick it in my back pocket. And then like for the next hour, I would just keep reaching back and grabbing corn nuts. And like, I liked them because they were crunchy and they were salty.
Hmm.
So yeah, I haven't eaten corn nuts in decades, but I used to do corn nuts. Now it's Snickers and
Yeah.
a Monster. What about you?
Always, well, not always. Most of the time, a Coke. Coke is. I don't drink soda ever,
Hmm.
really.
Yeah.
But I will have a Coke on a long ride, and usually a almond Snicker. I have preference for the almond Snickers, and a small bag of Fritos. Again, I don't do
Yeah.
chips,
Yeah.
but the salt. It's the Fritos. So kind of like your corn. What are they? Corn nuts? I don't know if I
Corn
know what those
nuts.
are, but
I mean,
and
they're
then I
like
almost
kernels of corn that are really hard. So they're little,
right,
but they're like,
right,
they're tasty, they're flavored, and they're salty
yeah,
and they're crunchy.
yeah. And then I almost always pick up a bag of like gummies of some sort. I usually will have training food like PB&J and or whatever bars. But a lot of times when you get to the gas station, I'm like, I just want some simple sugars, so I'll do like the Blue Dolphins or the Swedish Fish, and then I'll just have them in the bento box. But yeah, just basic sugar. That's
I
my
remember
go-to.
buying like a giant, like, I don't even think they sell it at Costco anymore, but they used to, I don't know, decades, like a giant, like a 10-pound bag of gummy bears. I would just, I mean, that was my training. Again, this is like, you got to remember that 90s, like, it was before we had all the things we have now, but it was way cheaper too. So, like, I would
God,
just
yeah.
fill up a Ziploc bag with a bunch of gummy bears and then just have it in my pocket and leave the bag open. And I would just keep reaching back. And, like, I'm just, the whole time was like, here's your chews, or
I
just
mean,
gummy bears.
to be honest, even after I started doing more long trail runs on my own, there was multiple long trail runs that I would do where, well, back when I lived in Netherlands, I lived on my route was a gas station. If I didn't have any training fuel, I always had water, in my backpack, but I would just stop and get like whatever gummy bears and I would eat that for 6, 7 hours. Stop. And because it's simple sugars, right? Like I get the reason, like it might not agree with everyone's stomachs, and I understand the reasons for different types of training fuel, but I think, if it works, like I was just on the phone with an athlete the other day, and they're like, I was like, what have you been eating for your long rides on the trainer? And they're like, I don't know, gummy bears, and I'm like, it's actually not that bad because you're using it right away. It's cheap. It's way cheaper than all the fancy stuff out there, and even to be honest, like if you want to race with it, it's probably not the worst thing in the world if it works for you, right?
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm. I mean, the only issue is potentially like if it's just bulky to carry or
true,
whatever, you know what I mean? So
true,
like
yeah,
there can be logistical issues that makes like actual training fuel a better choice on race day.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But if you, yeah,
yeah,
so
I'm a
yeah,
fan of gummy bears.
yeah. Okay, so I think we had another couple of open water or pool swimming.
People will, so I love the ocean for a lot of reasons. And because of the way that my mind thinks when I'm swimming, like I typically choose the pool. Like I have access to ocean every single day and I still choose the pool.
Yeah,
But I love ocean probably more than most people do. But I like the structure of a pool.
yeah. I took a family vacation a couple years ago to Maine, and we rented a cabin on a lovely lake, and it was very cold, and it was crystal clear water. And if I lived on that lake, I would swim in that lake every day in the summer. Probably not in the winter; it's probably frozen over in the winter, but it was amazing. I would have normally said pool as well, because access in Colorado, it's not so much. But if I lived, and I don't know about ocean. I mean, yeah, I swim a lot in the ocean when I lived in Hawaii, but there is something about the consistency and the just routine regularity of the pool that I like. I like staring
Hmm.
at the black line. If I can get my butt to the pool, I enjoy it. It's just
Yeah.
where I live. It's far, and yeah, time is limited.
You know what
Yeah.
I might caveat that and say when I'm not that fit, I like the ocean. But the fitter
Mm-hmm.
I get, the more I like the pool. And it's because my experience then in the pool is interesting because I give myself different goals and decide what pace I want to do. And I can play pacing games and that kind of thing. So it ends up being more interesting. But when I'm trying to gain fitness and so I don't care about what my pace is, then the ocean. So yeah, I might caveat that. Say as long as I'm fit, then I like the pool. Because when I'm not fit, I really don't like the pool.
Yeah,
I'm
I
still
understand
judgmental,
that.
that's why. All right, road
Yeah.
bike, TT bike, gravel bike, mountain bike. Rank them in order.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go now with gravel, road, mountain, TT bike. But mountain TT, well, okay, wait, no. Because I ride my TT bike on the trainer still, but I have not taken my TT bike out on the road in forever. There's caveats too, because it's like Well, are you riding roads that are closed to traffic? Because then it would be road bike, It kind of depends on what the safety issue is. I've found, and I lived in Boulder County for a long time where, there's tons and tons of cyclists, and there's too many drivers and there are too many distracted drivers at this point. And where you live, I mean, I lived in Hawaii. I did ride from Manoa, from campus home over to Kailua one time on my very old mountain bike, and it was terrifying. Not because I couldn't do it, but because the traffic was horrible. And yeah, I rode when I lived in the back of Manoa Valley. I would ride my mountain bike to campus, but I didn't ride in Hawaii. And I knew people that did, and I was like, "You are brave," because it's scary. So I guess I have to caveat it, right, with like, is the road safe or not? I just choose the safety now because I got dogs to come home to, and I want to come home, and that's the reality. So yeah. What about you?
When I was racing triathlon and Ironmans seriously, I 100% would have said TT bike over road bike. I just was like really, really comfortable on my TT
Yeah.
bike, even here on the Hawaii roads. Like I would just go out, get in my aero bars, ride up to the North Shore and back. I mean, I'd 100 miles at a time, almost never come out of my aero bars. Like just, I was very, very comfortable in it. Uh, I've since sold my TT bike so that now that's not an option. Now I would choose road bike over. I love my road bikes. I have several of them now and I really like them. So currently I would say road bike. And then here's my confession. I've never ridden a gravel bike. We don't really have gravel roads
Yeah.
here.
It's
But I imagine so this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to put gravel ahead of mountain, even though I've never ridden a gravel bike, but just because I can imagine that I would enjoy that experience more than mountain biking, only because the couple of times I've mountain biked, it's been so bad. Like I'm not a mountain biker. I wish I was. I think that girls who can ride like over those rocks and like down and on those single track trails, like I have a couple girlfriends that do that stuff, and I think that they're badass. Like I think they're amazing. I wish I had their grit and their fearlessness and their like so when you say like fear of cars, like I will take my chances with the cars every day
yeah.
of the week before I would go out on one of those stupid trails that has those big boulders that they're like, like absolutely not. So the mountain bike falls last on the list for me
So
because I'm not as cool as people
right.
might think.
Well, and I have to admit, like I'm not a mountain biker that goes out on the gnarly trails. I mean, there's a ton of gnarly mountain bikers in Colorado, and that is not me. I did recently buy another mountain bike to tool around my where I live because even where I live right now, I can ride my gravel bike on some of the roads, but if you take a wrong turn, like it's way too, rocky and too steep, and I can't, it's just I'm basically using a mountain bike to fulfill my desire of riding outside because the roads here, there's no shoulders and the speed limit is 75. And it's just, it's not good. It's pretty dicey. And even the gravel. And so there are gravel, but I say really where I'm at now, it's more like sand. It's not even really nice dirt. It's like sand and washboard, and it's actually not super fun. So right now, I mean, I'm trainer. I should have actually said, what am I riding the most? It's actually I'm still riding my TT bike the most because I ride the trainer, and then I'm out, occasionally on my gravel bike, very rarely on my road bike, which is sad because when I was still in Netherlands and kind of was transitioning away from racing a lot, I was on my road bike almost. Even when I was racing, I rode my road bike a ton because it's all climbing
See,
and
I didn't. Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't at all. Like I was full 100% TT bike all the time, which is
yeah.
probably why I was so comfortable on it. And I remember, because I remember having training partners that are like, "Oh, I like my road bike so much more than my TT bike. And I like didn't understand that at all until I started riding my road bike more. And then I was like, now I get it.
I was very comfortable with my TT bike, and I wasn't like I never rode it. I basically had like if I was going to ride the mountains, I would ride my road bike, and if I was going to ride on the flats down in Boulder, I'd take my TT bike down. And so it was like I had a really Boulder has a lot of really nice options for cyclists and triathletes to mix it up, and the roads there, the gravel is exquisite, and the mountain biking. I'm sure I never really did a lot of mountain biking there, but it's the reason it's so popular among cyclists is it's really got a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, speaking of trainer platform, so what's your favorite
Okay.
like indoor training platform that you use?
So I have tried to get my athletes on Velocity. So it's this new like it's how to describe it. I mean, have you heard of Velocity at all?
No, I've
Yeah,
heard I've heard of it, but I have never used it, so I don't know what it is.
it is basically like an online coaching platform where you have like the coaches coaching you through a workout with a video paired. And so it feels like if you've done Trainer Road, but it's better. It's way better than Trainer Road. Like the coach writes the workout, you have different, you can control. Well, what's really nice is actually you can force the rider to be an erg or not erg. You can vary the resistance of the trainer, assuming it's a smart trainer. Hey, sorry. To me, it's a smart trainer. I mean, you can still have power and heart rate only and not no smart trainer. You know, if you do have an athlete that has a dumb trainer, and they have done some integration, like you can now hook up Zwift with it as well. Like you can have your coach's video and you can still be riding in velocity, but having Zwift pop up so that you get your Zwift miles. So I left Zwift a couple of years ago because I'm not into the gaming. I just don't care. You know, I don't care about racking up points. I don't care about the group rides. I just don't care. So I did Trainer Road for a while and I did not like that at all.
Hmm.
One, their automated algorithms are terrible. Like the automated, like rides, it was like 2 minutes warm up for a VO2 max workout. The AI was terrible. It was
God.
terrible.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Oh my God.
no,
Short warm-ups are not my thing either. I hate that.
no. So
It's
yeah,
probably my biggest pet
velocity.
peeve.
And then if I didn't have velocity, I would probably just go back to going off my watch. I don't think I'll ever go back on Zwift. I just don't care. So what about you? Are you a
This is
Zwifter?
where Mickey and I differ. Is I'm like level 100 plus on Zwift. And what's funny is that this is what I used to, when I first got like a smart trainer, I used Trainer Road. And I really like the simplicity of it. I'm like, I just want to look at the bar graphs, put some music on, and do my work, right? And I didn't want to be entertained. I didn't want to play games. I didn't want any of that. And then at some point, it was during beginning of COVID when a lot of like sort of groups
Hmm.
started doing group workouts indoors or whatever. And there was a not local, there was a coaching group that asked me to run, like they were trying to run like multiple sessions or whatever and they needed a coach to like lead. So I
Hmm.
wasn't part of the coaching group, but they were like, will you lead one of these weekly sessions? Because we're trying to offer a lot with different time zones. So like my time zone, worked for that. And they're like, "Oh, it's on Zwift," and I was like, "Oh God, I don't like Zwift."
Yeah.
Like I had tried it once, and I was like, I didn't understand it, and there's like way too much going on, and I just can't. But because of this thing, I had decided to do it, so I got into it. And then when I started like learning about it, it was funny because like I hear what you're saying. Like I have never been into video games at all. Like I never got into video games. I didn't like them. And yet once I mean, whoever designed Zwift in the video game, whatever, like they got me. Like they did it. Whatever they were trying to do, they did it well because they sucked my brain right in. And I decided that like I wanted to earn points and I wanted to level up and I wanted to get that bike. And I read all about like the different, which bikes are faster for climbing and for flats. And I
Hmm.
used to get all strategic about like picking what bike I wanted to ride.
Hmm.
And, depending on the course and the demands of the course. And then I got into the group rides and I did like the team time trials because like, I mean, those were really hard but fun because it was like, I think it was at that time where I was craving group interaction, but we
Hmm.
didn't have group interaction.
Right.
Zwift was providing that, like that stimulus for me. So I got into it and then I just basically never stopped. And I wouldn't say there was never a time where I was like, I'm going to ride Zwift on purpose because I'm trying to level up or trying to
Hmm.
accumulate more points. At some point, but I just ended up riding it enough that like,
You're.
I did it. Now I kept telling myself that once I hit level 100 that I would switch over to the new Trainer Road virtual
Hmm.
platform. It's like mostly just because it's free. And my understanding is it does like the same thing that the Zwift does, but it's free.
You
You
mean in Training Peaks, right? Because I think
training Training
Trainer
Peaks.
Road,
Yes, sorry.
Training Peaks.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
not Trainer Road. So the Training Peaks
Training
has its
Peaks.
own
Yeah.
virtual platform now. And I've downloaded it. I looked at it and I like can't bring myself to do it. And so here's the thing. At this point, I'm not even playing the Zwift games anymore, right? Like I rarely jump into group rides. Most of the time I'm just riding by myself. If I think about like why is my brain attracted to Zwift still, I think it's because I'm at level 100, I've ridden all the routes and I know the routes. Like I know how long the climbs are. I know
Yeah.
where the sprint points are. And so I can decide what kind of workout. So I rarely anymore do structured workouts. Like every once in a while I'll do a structured workout, but most of the time I get on Zwift and I just ride. A lot of times I'm just riding easy while like listening to a podcast or watching Netflix or whatever, because I ride hard when I'm outside. Usually when I'm
Hmm.
outside, I'm riding hard. And so when I'm inside, I'm like, I need to balance that out because if I ride hard inside and hard
Right.
outside, that's
It's
not
too
good for me.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. So most of the time when I'm inside, I'm just kind of spinning. So I'll pick a flat route and just like, spin my way through it. But on the occasion that I want to work hard inside, typically what I'll do is pick a route that I know that has,
Hmm.
it's a
Some
loop
client. Yeah.
thing where it's like, and it'll time you on the loop. And so you can do like, I'm going to do this loop that's roughly 20 minutes. I'm going to do it 3 times over the course of an hour. The first time is going to be a warm up, and then it timed me. And the second time I'm going to go stronger. And then the third time I'm going to see like what's the fastest
Hmm.
time anybody's done out there. And I'm going to try to get that. Right. And
Yeah.
then you're like, you're motivated and
Yeah.
it'll show your little avatar that you can race your little avatar on there. So I do feel like it offers enough stimulus for my brain to make an indoor ride interesting if I wanted to actually, focus, or like I know where the climbs are, I know what my times are up different climbs, depending on how strong I'm pushing or
Yeah.
whatever. So at this point, Zwift is more like a security blanket. I just know it so well. I'm so comfortable with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a huge follow. I mean, I think honestly, my 2 cents is Training Peaks is going to have a hard time. I think they're going to make it paid eventually. I think I read that. I don't quote me on it, but with me trying to get my athletes to move over to Velocity, I mean, I basically can't. I can't get them to move over. They won't leave. Even with the integration with Zwift, it's like, well, I still want to ride on Zwift, and so yeah,
Zwift is like a drug. I mean, it is. I
yeah,
really think it is like an addictive drug where like they. And I remember thinking at one point like, kudos to the game designers here because your whole goal was to like tap into my brain and manipulate me,
yeah,
and you did it.
yeah,
So like,
absolutely. Yeah,
congratulations, you win. I'll just keep
yeah,
riding Zwift even when I have a free option that does like basically the exact same thing, and I'm like, I'm just not willing to learn a whole other
yeah,
world. So yeah,
yeah.
do
I
it
agree. Well, we're gonna have
anyway.
to
All
do
right.
another one of
Yeah.
these because we've talked
This
too
is
long
really
again.
fun.
I know it
I
is fun.
know.
We'll have to we'll 'cause there's still tons of questions that I want to ask you, and I feel like we've only
Hmm.
barely scratched the surface, right? So yeah, we'll have to do one of these again in a couple weeks, and maybe get our athletes to ask some questions on what they want to know about us if they want to know anything. Maybe it's hopefully it's been
Yeah,
fun
yeah,
for you guys to
yeah,
listen.
yeah. Listen, I was just babbling. Maybe you were riding Zwift the whole time you were watching. I mean,
Maybe
this
you
is the
were.
kind of thing, genuinely, this is the kind of thing that I watch when I'm riding Zwift and I'm just pedaling away at like, 110 watts or whatever, spinning, breathing through my nose and just listening to people talk about, stuff that I'm interested in or whatever.
Absolutely.
Hopefully this
Yeah.
entertains somebody through their boring Zwift ride.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, always a pleasure, Michelle. We'll talk again soon.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Becky.
Okay. Thank you.